This morning, we have this morning with us, if you joined us at the top of the hour, you saw the CEO of Commission for University Education. This is Mwenda Ntarangwi. Also, we have with us the principal, or not really, the principal secretary, that is the Ministry of Education in the State Department of Vocational and Technical Training, that is TVET. We have Dr. Kevin Desai with us. Also, we have the Vice Chancellor of the Scott Christian University. This is Professor Mumo Wakisao. Also, we do have with us as well, that is the CEO of Kenya National Qualifications Authority. This is Dr. Juma Mkwana. And we have also the Acting Director General of the National Employment Authority, Edith Okiki, with us this morning. So there's a raft of issues that we're going to be discussing here this morning as far as academia is concerned. I've just read from that particular intro about this raft of streamlinings that also the Cabinet Secretary is seeking. First of all, TVET is also on top of the agenda, and we want to hear from our panelists this morning as we get to discuss. So let's talk together, let's get to drive the show together as well. Now, let's just begin with Mwenda on this, because we started with you even on the intro as well. The Ministry of Education has revealed, first of all, 107 university programs with a collective capacity of 6,721 students are on the chopping block, because they're saying, oh, there's no relevance of this particular program as well. And I think also this sparked a lot of debate when we had those revelations with the report that you came up with. Just tell us more about this.
Thank you, Debarl. Let me just say that some of the programs that have been identified actually do support some of the key development areas. One of the things that scrutiny has given us is that some of those programs is not that the students refuse them, as a professor the VC for Embu mentioned recently.
Yes.
It's because some of the students did not get the right cluster to get into them. And we have statistics that a lot of students did fail to obtain the grade needed in biology. And biology is a key ingredient in a number of clusters. So some of those programs that are needed are as a result of students not attaining the right kind of grades to be in those programs. And also is to look at what level do we decide that a program is not fit. We have to have more information in terms of the skills that are being produced through those programs. What are the skills that are needed by the students? What are the skills that employers are identifying as critical, so that we do not make hasty decisions, but also that we are informed by good data. But some of the programs is because the students do not score the kinds of points needed in order for them to get into them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. First of all, these particular programs, we have some of universities that also were flagged as, they're saying these are not, so to speak, they were calling them, and we had media also calling them sort of bogus degrees. Why were these particular universities picked? We saw a lot of them, and Kisii was actually leading on that list as well.
I don't know about bogus degrees. We have to really.
Was that the creation of the media? They always say, oh, useless degrees, bogus degrees.
Yes, I think we are all entitled to our opinions, but facts will allow us to make those decisions. It's a matter of, again, deciding what are the skills that we need, what is the content that is needed. If there are programs that are not fit in terms of their quality, then let's talk about that. If there are programs that are irrelevant to where we are going as a nation, let's look at that. But it has to be based on information. And I'm glad that we have a panel of people from different sectors who can help us get more in depth on those matters. But let's not be quick to label anything useless or bogus until we have enough information. You know, this is an age of quick turnarounds, even before you've done due diligence and peer reviews of what it is. And a number of us have to know that the kinds of programs we talk about are taught in other places, in other countries, and we have to see how are they related to where the nation is going, where the region is going, where the world is going, and how can we harness on them. Quality we have to establish so that they are taught and they're taught well, they have the right facilities, and the students are getting value for their input. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And there has been a debate that from the public university and the private universities, more of the students who are actually taking their degrees in private universities, what we have from the private universities is more credible, graduates that they're actually being absorbed by the labor market. So the skills or the quality of the graduates that we're having from private universities, it's higher than actually from public universities. And I think maybe this is where I can actually also rope in Mumo Wakisao to actually tell us this particular development. This has been in the media. We can quote some of the sources as well, so to speak. But what is the difference or the discernible difference that we have between private and the public? Is it when it comes to quality?
Debarl, I am not sure that, sometimes it's a perception. And somebody said that when you perceive something, it becomes a reality to the perceiver. Mm-hmm. And what has happened is that for many years, Commission for University Education, represented here by Mwenda, was giving charters to the private universities. And the public universities were established by an act of parliament. Mm-hmm. And because of that fact, then, the Commission for University Education for many years beamed their lenses, their cameras on quality to the private universities. And because of that fact, then, I can tell you, like Scott Christian University maybe, 1997, when we were chartered by the Commission, we had to be scrutinized all the time. So we had to really keep quality, and most of the other private universities the same way, so that the public universities then, for some reason, the Commission for University Education was not really beaming at them as much. But now that recently, all universities are now chartered by the Commission for University Education, and therefore the quality is the same standard. We use the same regulations and the same standard. However, what I can tell you is because of a small handful of students or graduates from private universities have found now some niche within the marketplace, it does not mean that the public university graduates are not, they're not qualified. What I've heard many times is that we're having half-baked graduates. And I've always asked people, I've not been to the kitchen. You have not been to that kitchen to find out how the baking happened. Yes. So that you can say this is half-baked. Mm-hmm. And so what I can say to you, Debarl, is that as long as someone has gotten a degree from a university passed by the Senate of that university, yes, the quality is assured. I would like to tell the nation that we shouldn't be worried and say that this is non-quality or that is not quality. But the employers have a preference of what they want, and because of that fact, then it might look like they are going to the private university graduates. But let me tell you, all these are our children. And therefore, the universities and Commission for University Education, which can be then forged by Mwenda here, are beaming their lenses on quality to everyone. So that then people should be assured that there's quality in the graduate that we produce.
Right, thank you.
However, let me quickly say this. For many years then, we have smaller numbers in terms of classes. Mm-hmm. And because of that, then we're able to do much more tutorials, much more teaching as compared to public universities who have bigger numbers, and they have a challenge of that numbers.
Thank you. Right, thank you. Dr. Desai, let me just also come to you. First of all, today we have a very interesting editorial cartoon in the Daily Nation. Of course, this is all about the curriculum competence-based, which is drawing a lot of flack as well. And we can see Magoa there hard at work trying to fix that engine. There's some nuts which are giving him problems as well. He's trying to actually work on it. But nonetheless, so far since he came into the ministry, we can see he's trying hard to make sure that changes are being effected as well. The question is, first of all, when you're talking about the competency-based curriculum, also there calls for university to align their programs to the competency-based curriculum being rolled out, lest the situation renders our higher education defunct as well. So where is that nexus as far as this competency-based curricula is concerned and the higher education?
Debarl, it all starts with the realization that the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with respect to our competitiveness, our social progression, our environmental conservation, depend on high gains in terms of productivity, innovation, and efficiency. Indeed, much of industry, the social sector and industry, is highly dynamic, and for various reasons and various variables. It's also in need of national systems to be highly responsive and flexible. And what that turns out to be is that we need to ensure that the trainings that we provide, especially when it comes to the development of skills, are closely linked to outcomes of standards. And these standards are measurable and exacting tolerances that the social sector and industry requires. And it's from this basis today, competency-based education and training has a link to these standards. It's a highly inclusive system. It's one of the most inclusive systems to ensure full alignment of not only technical skills, but also life skills, attitudinal skills, skills that are of importance to the national values, and so on. It requires all stakeholders to be involved in order to first and foremost establish the standards, but in realization that situations are dynamic, therefore standards need to be constantly raised as well as transformed. But it then goes on to developing curriculum to achieve those standards, and subsequently the assessment is done by the private sector, the social sector, with a view of ensuring that the entire system in terms of training to standards has been accomplished. So this is one of the most profound changes we're facing with respect to the transformation of technical vocational training. But this very standard, based on an occupational standard, can also then permeate into university education, thereby enriching the entire process. University education is both academic as well as skills. And I think that this permeation would then add value in terms of quality and relevance.
All right. Also, the government of Kenya and the federal government of Germany in December, I think last year, signed a bilateral development cooperation agreement towards promoting comprehensive approach to skills development in Kenya with 3 public universities that you identified that will be, of course, exceedingly beneficial from the Memorandum of Understanding. Maybe you can tell us these particular universities, which are they, and also what really informed the choice of these 3 universities as well.
Right. So these institutions are actually technical vocational centers: Kiambu Institute of Technology, Thika Technical Institute, and Nairobi Technical Institute. What this initiative is all about is the realization that we need to create deeper talent pools in sectors. The coverage that we're looking at, the entire value chain of skills, include artisan, craftsman, master craftsman, technician, and technologists. We need to increasingly, in order to be competitive, look at the entire educational system as a whole. Specifically ensure that it's sector-based. And when we're looking at the fields that they've chosen, like mechatronics, food processing, what it means is that we'll be able to train artisans, craftsmen, master craftsmen, technicians and technologists to the highest possible level. And that would then have a direct link to our competitiveness by ensuring that it has a direct link to the function of productivity, innovation and efficiency. One of the other areas that we've chosen is automotive, in view of the fact that Kenya's fast becoming an automotive assembly center for vehicles and manufacture of parts. And so it's these skills and competencies that are the precursor to the economic development of a sector. Similarly, we are creating several other centers of excellence. In Kisumu, we're creating a center of excellence for textiles, from seed to fashion at Kisumu Polytechnic. In Meru, we're creating a center of excellence for construction, everything to do with standards, equipment and structures for infrastructure development. The concept behind centers of excellence is that today's institutions and technical vocational centers will not only provide skills development but also upskilling, and more importantly the recognition of prior experience. You could be a technician or an individual who's been out there for several years without having been through an educational system, but you'd simply come to be assessed in order to be certified and then be linked to the formalization of an economy. The other three areas that are key with respect to outcomes of these centers of excellence include technology transfer, the real promotion of technology within our industrial and social environment, the ability to promote science, technology, innovation, the promotion of enterprise creation. And so this opens up a new dawn, but very much based on that standard, because it's the standard that ultimately determines our success and also promotes the greatest level of recognition and mobility to our youth to travel the world and to work in the world, and to have the greatest amount of choice and option.
Thank you. But the question will also arise, are they well-rounded? But we have all these sort of facets of training, but also missing out is maybe also the soft skills approach that people are really talking about. There is also a wonderful piece in the Daily Nation today, page 18, if my director may just pick up that. Soft skills make graduates employable. This is by Martha Oigo. And she goes on to say that despite public universities getting the first priority in selecting students, and so ending up with lion's share of the creme de la creme of high school leavers, the private ones are giving them a run for their money when it comes to producing employable graduates. This is backed by the 2013 study by Moi University's School of Education. The findings presented at the Transforming African Higher Education for Graduates Employability. And this is where we want to also rope in Dr. Juma Mukwana and also Edith on this as well. There is this cry that is coming from the labor market, and recently also the Federation of Kenya Employers came up with this report, skills mismatch survey report, that also we shall be looking at much later in the course of the program. But why is there a disconnect between what is coming from the technical institutions and higher, that is universities as well, and the labor market? Let's just begin with you, Juma.
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. Yes, I think that first we have to note that we are actually dealing with a moving target. So there are a lot of changes in technology. There are lots of changes in terms of what the labor market is expecting. And when you look at different models, the Kenyan model where you train a student in a college and then you take that graduate to the workplace has been working for us, but we also know that when you go to other jurisdictions, for example, you just talked about Germany, where they are doing this, what they call the dual TVET training, where the student is actually taking half of the training in the college, and then half of the training is taking place in industry or with employers. So what we see in Kenya is that, one, we have very big ambitions in terms of the Vision 2030 and now the African Union Vision 2063. And we are saying we want to industrialize, we want to move like the big four agenda. What it means is, the question we're asking is then, do you have the skills to take you to that level? Part of development and moving towards higher echelons of development is that you have the human power to take you to the higher level. So what we are seeing is, yes, within the market, what we see is we still have large disconnections between the training and the market. But I see a lot of engagement by the stakeholders, KNQA involved, and I know Federation of Kenya Employers, workers unions, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, all these coming together to say what works for us. And I think that is what the PS is saying, that what we need to do as a country, increasingly, one, is to try and integrate the workplace with training. And that is very, very important. And I see this week we just launched the Kenyan dual TVET training system with the PS was launching. And part of what is involved in that system is to create more training in the workplace. The other issue that you have also mentioned, in terms of employability of our graduates, yes, we notice that we have large numbers of young people that are coming into employment, and the question now is who is going to get employment. And so the issue of soft skills, ICT for example, issues of teamwork and leadership, soft skills that will integrate the person into because the soft skills is what really integrates the graduate into the workplace. You may have some technical skills, but if you cannot work well with people, those become issues. So I think that, and also as a country, we've been working in silos. I'm happy that we are now working as a team. University, TVET, basic, that all that needs to come together so that we really, whatever we do, if it's competence-based in primary, in secondary, in TVET, in university, then that is going to give us the kind of skills that we are looking for.
A good place also to actually rope in also, Edith, on this, because you're joining now that continuum as well, and you're the tail end as the National Employment Authority as well. A big day for you tomorrow. You can tell us about also tomorrow, you're launching tomorrow, and what also the National Employment Authority is all about. How is it going to help this sector? That yes, we have all these graduates churned out from universities and technical institutions as well, but employment is critical at the end of the day.
Thank you. Indeed, yes, employment is very critical. And you know, Kenyan families value education, and they're investing a lot in education. And at the end of the day, what they're expecting from this is for their children to get employment. And therefore, the Employment Authority will be able to work very closely with universities and training institutions in advising and also informing them on the areas where employers have particular interests or where they're leaning towards, where the jobs are really coming from. And from what we are seeing, and a study needs to be done on this, is that in the near future, maybe the training as it is continuing, we may render most of the jobs obsolete.
In the near future?
In the near future. Because if we continue just doing the standard way of training, and I'm glad to hear from my colleague that the three areas of education are now working closely together, because you find what employers actually want and what the kind of job seekers that we have registered with us, it's very difficult to match them. And you find certain areas may be difficult to fill. Yes, there's unemployment, but we need to work closely with the employers, that is manufacturers especially, so that we can churn out the kind of employable people that they'll require. And that is where now the National Employment Authority comes in, because we register the job seekers that come in the market, and we also register the vacancies that come in the market. So we are able to advise. And there's also the Kenya Labour Market Information System that is developed by the ministry, where they look at the demand and the supply side. And I know all these synergies are going to help the future of work in this country.
And now I want just also to rope in the PS in the State Department of Vocational and Technical Training in Kenya. This is Dr. Kevin Desai, to just tell us a bit also what is happening in the informal sector. Because looking at the TVET 2013 Act, some of the requirements or maybe some of the functions that the ministry or the TVET or the Act really stipulates for you is first established training system which meets the needs of both the formal and informal sectors as provided under this act. And we've had the informal sector crying foul and saying, you know, a lot of them are in the informal sector, the Juakali sector. They have their experience, but also the attendant may be qualifications as, you know, as per the certificate that is wanting. You'll find many of these people are saying all that they have to do is theory, but they have experientially they have the knowledge, the practice for long years, but there is that mismatch. What are you doing as a ministry in terms of actually making sure that, yes, if somebody is within the Juakali sector, has been maybe on that job for the last 30 years, is qualified, so to speak, but the attendant papers are not there? This is under your remit as far as the function is concerned, briefly.
Yes, indeed, Debarl, this is one of the most exciting opportunities we have as a nation to promote a role and an involvement in the transformation of the informal sector. After all, it's 70% of our employment structures, possibly even much higher. The issues here have always been the polarization of the informal sector to the larger economy and to multinationals. And it's primarily on the basis of skills that meet standards, that raise the level of productivity, innovation and efficiency. The informal sector, while it has a lot of energy, business acumen, is thriving in terms of networks, needs to achieve high levels of standards. And this is where our educational system comes in, especially with respect to TVETs, which assist in not only upskilling, but also ensuring that they have a structure that promotes assessment, which enables the informal sector, if they're not individuals who have not been in an educational system, to be assessed based on their experience or to be retrained and then certified. This is increasingly becoming very important, because in order to have access to opportunities with respect to government opportunities in construction, like the Big Four agenda, the housing sector, or specific areas of industry, all of this is based on very exacting tolerances, measurable achievements in terms of work outcomes. And so increasingly this nexus between the TVET sector and the informal sector becomes one of our priority agendas, where we're also able to promote technology transfer, share some of the equipment that we have, with a view of seeing how we're able to address aspects of standards and further finishing of goods. But it's also a nexus that promotes the ability for, on one hand, we're able to transition the informal sector to greater levels of productivity and innovation, but on the other, it's to ensure that we have a transition of our graduates into self-employment opportunities and gainful employment opportunities. So it's an active and a co-beneficial relationship that promotes the highest level of transition of young people.
All right. Of course, I'll let you go as well this morning, because I know you have a meeting this morning. Thank you for actually availing yourself this morning, despite the fact that, yes, you have another meeting and an engagement this morning. We really do appreciate you, Dr. Kevin Desai. He has to leave right now. But, of course, that particular question about TVET still, and not only just TVET, but that informal sector, you're still tethered Dr. Desai? Yes, with the microphone you'll be helped. Yes, let me just come to you, Mwenda, and on this as well. Now, this is you as an academician as well. This has been in the pipeline for quite a long time, and we've always had the promises from the government. Yes, we'll try and streamline that and provide that particular nexus, but nothing has been coming to the fore as well. And we'll hear from also Dr. Juma on this, because now this is also the ambit of, or is under the remit of the Kenya National Qualifications Authority as well. But broadly, you can tell us.
Yeah, I think, Debarl, what you have touched on and what the PS has engaged are two key areas in our training system. On the one hand, we have people who have learned on the job. You have a person who has learned how to overhaul an engine without the theoretical principles of what that entails. On the other hand, we have people who value credentials. So we have practice and we have credentialing.
Yes.
And the system that brings those together is the most successful system because it honors the two, because as much as you are a practitioner, you also need to be able to understand why this all happens, so that when things change, I think Idesa talked about things changing in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. When things change, you have the ability to understand what has changed in the basic working framework. If you're given an engine that you've never seen before, mm-hmm. how do you make sense of what needs to be done if you don't have that academic basis? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the kind of place that we are finding ourselves, and you can see excitement about the ability to actually equate, and I think Dr. Mkhwana will talk about equate prior experience and show what does that mean in terms of levels of knowledge in a formal system. But also, it calls for interaction at all levels. How do we allow even those people with practice and practical experience to be knowledge producers for those that are doing theoretical work? Mm-hmm. I think that is critical, and as we integrate all levels of education, we stop working in silos, that will come out very clearly, because that's what we need. Integrated system of both practice and theory that is attending to the immediate things and also forecasting for the unknown, the things that will come in the next 10 years, which we don't know, and we are involved in. But let me use this opportunity also to say that this calls for playing from all sectors, so that when we, in the university, for instance, prepare students, we prepare them in general terms to fit in the relevant industry. But we're not training them specifically for industry X. It is industry X that takes that student and says, this is our culture, this is what we do here. But they can fit and they have the basics mm-hmm. that are needed mm-hmm. in order for them to succeed. And that kind of practice, those kinds of ideas that people have gained in practice also come into play. So I think I'm seeing a good connection between those people in the so-called informal sector coming in to inform those are in the formal, and the formal informing the ones in the informal, so that we work together in tandem. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So work together in tandem. Okay, on that particular same question, let's hear from also Momo.
Yes, Debarl. As when I was talking, I was just thinking and asking myself, why do people go to school? As we talk about restructuring education and streamlining, and I was seeing that as it is defined by UNESCO, education is for development. Education is for development. Mm-hmm. And the link between input, when somebody goes to school, the teacher teaches, output, when somebody is examined, we find whether this, whatever we are putting as the person has understood, then there must be outcome in terms of workplace, what somebody does, then there is impact, which is now the development we're talking about, personal, family, and country. Now, I was thinking about it and asking myself, this education, as we talk about it,
yes,
where is the disconnect? And I was thinking about that sometimes it's our narrative. Mm-hmm. You know what we tell a child, that child becomes what we keep telling the child. Mm-hmm. You tell a child you are wise, you are able to make it, you can make it, then they will make it. Mm-hmm. But if we tell them you are a fool, you can't make it, you will be like this, you will not make it. And therefore, in my considered opinion is that education, whether it be from the informal or the formal, whether from the primary, the basic to higher education, is supposed to be linked together, and is supposed to be able to bring out that knowledge, skills, and character. And if you combine those three items together, you know, knowledge of whatever subject it is, the skill set that we're requiring, and then the character, which is what we talk about, the soft skills. When you link those things together, I believe this country will be able to develop. And you see, like in that headline, which I'm seeing you have to put up there, we talk about failure. Failure. When we talk about failure, we become failures. So we must talk about our success. Success. I would like to see next time the nation now putting success in private universities, as you said earlier, success in public universities, success in TVET, success in formal and informal sector. If we can also have the narrative, because I quickly, last night when you requested me to come, I began to think about other countries. I've been to other countries, I've taught in other countries, and I was looking at their papers, and I've not seen any of them put a narrative like we do in Kenya. Is it possible, Bell, that we change our narrative?
But this narrative that maybe we can pick up the Daily Nation is highlighting what actually is in the country so far. And this is where we have Juma and also Edith, you know, will be finding it very hard because now science, there is a mass failure, a crisis in the country. And of course, that is Kenya's doom because critically, agriculture is leading on this as well. And when we're talking about STEM, it seems there is a slow uptake on sciences, and we wonder why. Why is there, you know, people are greatly shy to actually pick up on these subjects as well?
So before you leave me,
yes.
Before you leave me, I used to be
I'm
a
not
science
leaving
teacher.
you. We were together
I used
until
to
the
be
end.
a science teacher.
Yes.
In fact, in primary school. Mm-hmm. And when I was teaching science, what I noticed is the myth. When those children come and you introduce a biology, you know, there was no biology, it was general science. When you introduce the subject, they already come with ideas. Then later on, Debarl, I moved from teaching science to teaching Greek language. And when you come to the class of Greek, people already come with preconceived ideas of how this language is difficult, as well as the mathematics is difficult. But what I noticed as I was teaching the children, I would create songs, as well as in teaching Greek, I would create songs. And these songs will help these children to realize, in fact, science is not as difficult as they were taught by other people. So this science mass failure concept, imagine how many parents are reading, imagine how many children are reading, and therefore in their mind they begin to think, oh, as I go to that physics class or this chemistry class, I will not make it. I can tell you, that's what I'm talking about. Let's change the narrative. Let's help people know, when we do science, what is it for? How is it going to help us? And the child then will begin to do science when they are just in not even a pre-unit. Even earlier, you see children begin to play with the toys, arrange them scientifically.
Right.
Yes,
so I think then, Juma, you might need to start singing so that people, when you're teaching, it can actually be, you know, recorded subconsciously as well, so that people may grasp science as it is. Yeah. So singing also can become one of the attendant requirement for our teachers and our lecturers here in the country. Anyway, but you get the drift of what I'm talking about. Looking at that.
Yes, I think I need to form a singing club, and Mwenda is a team leader. What I would say is, and I've already alluded to this, is that, well, the world is changing, the world of work is changing, but also within the country, we have policy changes that are then impacting locally, and then we have issues that are then you have internationally. If I step back a little bit in terms of demand and supply, one of the studies that we undertook about 3 years ago was to look at what is driving this economy, or the Kenyan economy, and what are our colleges and universities teaching. And what we found was that, for example, and I indicated this before, and I have no intention of saying some of the programs are bad, but what we saw, for example, is that 74% of all the students enrolled in our universities enrolled in 3 areas. This is the area of business management, teacher education, arts and humanities. And when we looked at the sciences, for example, we found that when you put all together, medicine, engineering, ICT, and so on, that we only had about 13% of the students taking those kind of courses. And then we looked at what is driving the Kenyan economy. And what we saw, for example, is a lot of infrastructure, devolution, issues of health, ICT. And so what you find, and my sister Edith may be more familiar with this, is that then we have created a situation where in this country we have jobs without people, and then we have people without jobs, because we have not properly aligned what we are training with what the economy is looking for. And this is not unique for Kenya, by the way. But then as we go forward as a country, if we really want to move this country to the next level, we are going to have to get a proper match between what the economy is looking for and what we are training. And this also takes me back to the issue of what you're calling, in quotes, useless degrees. There's no useless degree, but what we'll say is that because this is a market, students will demand what they want, and the economy is also demanding what they want. And so if as a university you have a program that maybe the market is not looking for, I don't want to call it useless, but I'm saying that we also then need to move with time, so that we say, is this program still relevant for us? And the link between this and the informal sector, I wanted to bring this in. Part of the work that KNQA is expected to do is what we are calling recognition of prior learning. And what this means, if you look at who is driving the Kenyan economy, for example, your average, if you look at Nairobi here, 90% or more of the people who are doing masonry, plumbing, electrical work, mechanics, they really have never been to a class. So your average mechanic has the skills, but they don't have the papers. And that is why in the law now has recognized that we can actually go out and assess some of these skills and document them, because these skills are contributing to economic development. And so how do you document, and the other countries have done it, China, India, and so what we are grappling with is now setting up a system of how do you recognize these informal skills. The person who is building these 24-story buildings in Nairobi, this mason has no really papers from a college, but he can do plumbing and do electrical work. The people who are repairing, look at the Mudhurwa, the people who are manufacturing wheelbarrows and the jembes and jikos. They have the skills, but they don't have the papers. And so as a country, part of moving, bringing these skills into the formal setup is to recognize those skills, is to assign some credit to that knowledge and skill, and then use it, as Mwenda was saying, to inform even theoretical teaching, to say what have we learned from the Chuakali sector that we need to do. And so when you look at the Kenya National Qualification Framework, we have two roads. One is of academic, where we have people going through the academic to PhD level, but we also have the vocational, where we recognize that what is required here is skills and competences to actually deliver on what we are looking for. So as a country, we are at crossroads, and I'm happy that we are at this level. Now we have established a system where we are registering even some of these informal skills to say how many plumbers do we have, how many masons do we have in this country. And now the Employment Authority is here, so soon they will be telling us, this is what we have, and this is what we need, and the gap, how many plumbers do we need to train, so that we are not just training for the sake of training, but we are training because there's a gap. We are training electricians because we need them, we are training mechanics because we need them, and I think when we reach that level, then as a country, I think we'll be on a good footing.
It is maybe from also the survey mismatch report from the Federation of Kenya Employers. We have overqualification also in the job market, and they're saying graduates are slowly squeezing out the diploma and certificate qualified personnel in the job market. This is a project of a higher skilled economy with more people having a graduate degree as compared to diploma or other certificate qualifications. And they go on to list some of these jobs as well that people are overqualified for. And we wonder, when you're coming with that particular data, then how are you going to try and streamline this? Because it seems also the diploma certificates also, they're being pushed away, and we have now the revamping of the technical institutions. How are we going to mesh this as an authority?
Debarl, what I would like to say on this is that when you want to look at employment, you want all these people who are being trained to be able to get employment, so that there's no one particular level that is pushing the other away. And so this comes to investors who come to invest in this country. And there are very many other factors that bring investors in this country. And one of them is the skills that are available in the country. And how we handle that skill is what is going to be able to bridge the gap that we are talking about. Maybe there may be no gap. And what I would also want to say on this is that if we can be flexible in the way we do our training, whereby you find maybe a big investor, for example, maybe if I could say Sony, they come in the country and the people who are being trained are trained specifically maybe for Sony. You see, so that once they leave the training institutions, they automatically transit into that job. They are working and they are also being trained. You know, our training could be in such a way that you are trained, then you go out to look for the job. But what about now if we start training, looking at the kind of investors that are going to be attracted to this country, and to train specifically for those sectors? Then slowly, not only are we going to grow our economy, create more employment, but we are also going to be able to absorb most of these people at all levels, because all these investors not only just need people at certain levels. Yeah, they need them at all levels. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, looking at the functions of authority, because this is also a fairly new authority, and I think since 2016 you've been actually shaking into place, but tomorrow you're actually doing the launch as well.
Yes.
We shall run through some of these functions of the authority just briefly, and also I think this is very pivotal also for Kenyans who do not have jobs out there, because they need to register with the authority,
Yes.
so that you can try and also match their qualifications with their employers' requirements as well. So we'll see how this will pan out, and of course also going forward we're going to also engage you more robustly when it comes to issues of employment as well.
Okay.
But you'll talk about that also much later, just about the functions of the authority as well. But Mwendo, I want to come back to you, and we want just to open these discussions also to all of us, so you don't have to be in the silos. We've said now we integrated together. Anyone can chime in. When we're talking about also institutions being merged, and we can see a lot of institutions from banking sectors, people are merging right now, manufacturing sectors, people are merging right now, also universities. We can see the cabinet secretary saying maybe that is an avenue that we need to explore. We are far away too many universities, and I think there's a lot of duplications as well. This merger is also bringing bugbears and fears, because people are saying a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, especially the non-teaching staff as well. I don't know how the Commission is going to handle this merger as well, and are you prepared in any way? Do we have policies in place? Because I think this is fairly new when it comes to merging institutions in the country, especially universities in this country.
It is, Debarl, it is a new phenomenon. But I also do recall that when the CS made that directive,
yes,
he also emphasized the need to be very consultative, to consult with the key stakeholders and see if that is the way to go and how to go about it. But when you talk generally about merging institutions, I've said this before, that the question is not if we have too many universities in Kenya.
Yes.
The question is, do we have the capacity to ensure the highest level of quality in the ones that we have? Because if we were to say we would like to have 25% of all Kenyans have degrees, with about 45 million, and let's say how many people are eligible with the transitions from 100% transitions from primary to secondary, we will still not have enough institutions. But what we're talking about is, do we have the capacity to have maximum quality,
yes,
or the highest quality in the ones that we have? So there is a question of how do we ensure that we have the best successful students out of these universities. In mergers, we're talking about efficiency, using the resources, the limited resources we have prudently. Also making sure that where you have 3 programs and the capacity for the 3 programs is 100, but they are all having about 60, then you can say, if I run the 3, it is not efficient enough. If I had 1, which takes that capacity, then we have a better output in terms of the leanness and efficiency of doing that. We also have to look at how do we involve programs that are also, as you're saying, helping us prepare for the next level. So that as we're training for specific jobs, as we're training for specific things, we also have to understand there is training and there is education. You train for specific skills, but how long will those skills last? Again, I want to go back to what Edith said. Some of the things we are training for may not be useful. Research now is showing that some of the artificial intelligence, they have better work. I don't know, when was the last time you had to go into a travel agent's office, you know, to book a ticket? Sometimes you just do it on your phone. What are we going to train our people to do in terms of the travel industry? Where is it going? If that very basic function of going in to say, okay, I want to go to Mombasa, what are the tickets cost like? How do we adjust our training so that we respond to where that industry is going? And so when we talk about mergers and efficiency, we're talking about what do we have now? Where do we want to go? What resources do we have to maintain the highest of quality? Yes.
But when you talk about resources, I think also one thing that is informing the merger is about resources, because we have all these institutions which right now, some of them, they're about to declare insolvency. We've seen reports about some of the credible universities in the country, people saying now they're insolvent as well. Could that also be informing the mergers? Despite the fact that we have duplications and we have all this, as you say, and you don't want to admit that there are a lot of universities, we have critical issues with money and resources within these institutions. Any of us can actually chime in on this, even Momo or Juma.
Okay, yeah. I think that this is a fairly complex debate, and other countries have gone through it, South Africa, Rwanda, and others. And it's this debate that has been going on in Kenya for quite a while. And I know that about 3 years ago, because previously what the government used to do for special public universities is they received funding from the National Treasury. And then the system was changed to what we are now calling a differentiated unit cost, where a university is funded according to the number of students and what they are studying. And as Mwenda has said, if you really look at the numbers, of course, as I said, we have had internal Kenyan policy changes that have reduced. For example, when about 2015, when we had about 150,000 students getting C+ and above, we did not have issues with funding and also getting students to our universities. What has happened with the new policy changes, where now we have about 90,000 students getting C+ and above, the question now that is coming up is then do we have enough students to sustain the number of universities that you have? But we also know that the number of students who are qualifying to join university is not stagnant, so it is still going up. So this is a lot of debate, and my view has been that instead of thinking about how many universities we need, it is what type of universities do we need so that we address the future needs of this country. If we go back a little bit in the 70s, for example, we knew Kenyatta University was a place for teachers, and Egerton University was a place for agriculture, and Moi University was for environment. And over time, I think all the universities then kind of went into all kinds of areas. They became, let me call it a jack of all trade. And the bigger call has been, how do we get then back to specialized universities so that we have a center of excellence, so that we reduce duplication? Let me explain what I mean. Why should you have a department of agriculture engineering at the University of Nairobi with 45 students and a department of agriculture engineering at Taita Taveta University with 20 students? So you have a faculty, you have a lab, why don't we have these agriculture engineering students in one university, so that we build this university as a center of excellence? So my view has been that because of this duplication, we have made education very expensive. Because everybody wants to do law, why do we have so many law schools, some of them with 20 students, others with 30 students, when we can actually have 3 good law? And that's how the rest of the world has gone. If you have an ICT intensive university, then we try and match and build both the human, the technical resources. So for me, the way I see it, that's the way I see it, that we need to get more centers of excellence within the university so that we know if you're talking about education, this is the place to go. If it's law, if it's engineering, and then if we go that way, then we make better and more efficient use of the resources. And the other thing that I want to say is we are not training people in Kenya for Kenya. If you go to the region, if you go to Rwanda today, we have more than 30,000 Kenyans teaching. You go to Southern Sudan, and we have 15,000 Kenyans. Namibia, nurses, Botswana, South Africa, Australia. So really, if you look at the Kenyan education system, it's very well respected, and it is producing very high-level graduates. In fact, my thinking is that we are not just a logistic hub for Africa. We are actually a center of excellence in training. What we have failed to tap into is how do we internationalize Kenyan education so that we are not just supplying human power to the region, but also attracting international students. Because we have very good universities. Why are we not having students from South Sudan, from Uganda, from Rwanda studying here, and then getting more Kenyans into the African? Because now we are in the East African community, we are talking about free movement of labor and students. If you look at the vision, the Africa AU mission now, they are saying we want free movement of goods and services and labor and students across the continent. So really, as a country, we should not close ourselves into this little cocoon and say we don't have enough students, so the university should match. But what we are saying is, how do we build our market so that we attract? South Africa today is the leading country attracting foreign students from Africa. Kenya stands a very good chance of doing that. And so for me, that's the kind of debate that I would like us to engage in. Yeah,
let me come to Professor Mumo on this as well, because when we're talking about merger, we've seen also from that particular report that people don't really want to talk. I want not to just take off your hat as the chair of the Kenya private universities, but also come now to maybe theological schools in this country, and a theological university like you are with the Vice Chancellor of Scott Christian University.
Yes.
People are not responding to the call of God. We saw that they want to take theology and divinity, and of course in that line. Is it because now, and we can see the church is becoming very lucrative right now. The donations are coming to churches. We thought now this will happen also, that people will be knocking on the door. They want to become pastors as well. But on a lighter note,
yes.
But you can tell us more about this. Yes. When we're talking about mergers and there's a slow uptake on such faculties like theology, then what is the way forward?
Okay, Debarl, you touch a good place. In fact, Scott Christian University for many years had only one program. That was theology, since 1962. But when we were chartered by the government said then, through the Commission on Higher Education that time, and now Commission for University Education, that to be a university, you must have at least 4 programs, not just simply 1 program. We were specializing. In fact, most of the pastors in town who pastors, if I could use that term, are from Scott Christian University, including many of the teachers in theological colleges and Christian universities in Kenya and beyond Kenya. In fact, we trained up to Malawi and Zambia and South Sudan and even Rwanda and even Burundi and even Uganda. But coming to the major question, it is not easy. It's not easy because the government could do it easily, because if they wanted to, because the public university belongs to the government. They can declare and say so and so, as you have given birth to so and so, bring them back to become, tutor them. But in private universities, they are founded by people with their mission. There's a reason why they do it. I know that there are 2 universities, I'll not mention them here, who tried to merge. Even they went as far as Commission on University Education to report that they want to merge. But they haven't merged, as I'm aware now. They haven't merged. It's because of that conflicting interest. Because this is the founder at this interest line, this other founder at this interest line.
The vision is diametrically different.
As you try to merge, becomes a challenge. However, I'm in agreement that we need to look for programs, and like Mwana says, and as the Professor Mwenda says, we need to have centers of excellence. We need to look at, if I have 40 students and he has 60 students, why can't we put them together? I can give an example. One university in Kenya decided some 2 years ago, they were not ready for students. So they came back to Kapu and through me and to COPS to say, could these students be distributed to other places because we are not ready? That was a fair thinking about that university. Another university also came to me and said, we've been given 12 students to do education in our school, but we are not ready. Could you take them? And we took them. They are now going to their 4th year, and they are very happy that they came. And we explained to them why they are moving from that one college to this college. So I think as we think about mergers, we need to think about the modalities. What do we do? How do we do it? That there is not too much disruption in this merging of universities and colleges. But you talked about the core of God for people to do theology. Now, many of us in Kenya, they don't ask the pastors, do you have a degree or certificate or diploma before you come to preach to us? It seems like many of Kenyans are comfortable to be taught by anybody. And yet, not many of us are comfortable to be treated by any doctor. And you see, knowing a few verses in the Bible or whatever it is does not qualify you, really, to become a pastor. So that question of qualification becomes a huge challenge. And this is why you're finding many people not wanting to come to college. However, those who discover, and now we are actually training about, we have about 600 we are training at Scott Christian University, from certificate to degree level, to master's level, for theology. They have discovered why they need this training. Thank you. Yes.
Right, but I know that is a very ticklish area, or so to speak, because even without sounding simplistic, some of them will argue, did Jesus attend Jerusalem University, for that matter, to get a theological degree, yet he was, one of the seasoned teachers that we have in the world right now. I know that will be the question, and people will actually protest that and say the calling of God is not equated to your papers as well. So if you try to equate the calling of God with the papers, that is another...
I feel I should answer that for a second only, if I can. Jesus stayed with the disciples for 3 years, training them. And in the book of Acts, in fact, chapter 4, the leaders of religion in that time, they noticed these disciples, they have some authority in what they are talking about and what they are doing. And they said something very drastic. They noticed they'd been with Jesus. Jesus was the master teacher, was God himself. And therefore he told his disciples for 3 years before he could launch them out. Thank you.
All right. Edith, coming, of course, to qualifications as well, I think that is another arena that maybe you will want to explore, right? Some of these pastors that we have there, and they're seeking, employment, so to speak, or because we have so much flux or influx of pastors in this country. Some of them are really qualified; they've gone to school, but now even getting churches to lead is another different question altogether. But not on that. But you can tell us more about the national authority, because I think that is very pivotal as well when we are coming to registering of unemployed people in this country. I think this is very pivotal for our viewers this morning to know. Some of them that are holding degrees and they have diplomas and certificates, and they don't know what to do with these papers.
Yes. What I would also want to say on that is that we are not only just we should also train looking at our neighbors, as he had mentioned.
Yes.
Right now we have come up with a home care curriculum that has been developed. Yes. That is training people who are going to work in the Middle East. We realized there was a market there. We did enough study in that area. And we noticed that if you train the girls who go as house girls, because you'll not stop them going.
Yes.
So you'd better take a good package there. We are able to attract better remunerations for them and also good working conditions. And moreover, government has also signed bilateral with Saudi, for example, UAE and Qatar. So there is the curriculum and many other, let's say we would call it the home care package. We should not only just stop there. If we realize that we need maybe nurses or doctors for that area, because we want to upscale from just sending the semi-skilled people to skilled people. So if we realize that in certain areas there's a shortage, and in Kenya we have more of that, we look at that market and train for that market. Then you'll be creating employment, not only for within but also outside. And that is what the authority stands for. And since 2015, we have really come with elaborate, should I say, reforms in labor migration area. So a lot of it has been done. You remember before there were a lot of, which are still there. We still have a few challenges of briefcase recruitment agencies, but now they're being vetted by a ministerial vetting committee before we can give them accreditation. And it's specifically for those ones who are taking Kenyans to go and work outside the country. Yes. So those are some of the reforms that government is doing.
Maybe you can also weigh in on the internship programs as well, because I'm actually on the landing page of the National Employment Authority website. If my director CK may just pick up on this. This is it, regulations of employment agencies. This is what you've alluded to. We have people who are employers as well, who are all agencies, and they're trying also to recruit for Middle East also. There's a way, and you formatted a form they can fill in so that we may try to ward off also quirks on this. But when you come to internship as well, I think also we have many facets from the government. We have the Public Service Commission with the internship program. We have also other agencies within government with the internship program. Where is the nexus in all this? Because now you as an authority also will be looking for internship as well to try and connect the interns, people who are looking for internship and they have no places. That also will be under your remit. Briefly on that.
Precisely. Public employment, public service deals with internship for mainly in the government sector. What the National Employment Authority is dealing with is internship for the, let's just say, a national internship policy for other sectors. And we've looked at all the internship, because there's already the internships programs that are going on in the country, and we've looked at all these internship policies and come up with one that then is going to guide internship, how internship will be. We also have guidelines on how internship is going to be conducted. It's in draft form, it's already in cabinet, and some of the areas we are looking at, it's one area that has been abused, where employers will not employ, but permanently take people on internship. So we've come with certain guidelines that is going to guide on that. And we know that internship normally aims at empowering people to be ready for employment. So we want to be able to put as many people, especially university graduates and other graduates, into internship so that they are ready for employment. We already have a draft. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe we can just also pick out some of these questions that are being asked on Twitter before we wind up the show. We have Bernard Koech saying, let me just begin where he actually asked this question. He asked, for example, why do we employ a first-class engineering student to go and inspect items in a conveyor belt in a factory? I think employment sector should be expanded. Companies should be given incentives to invest in research and development. Government should also invest a lot in R&D. Then he goes and says, why am I asking this? This week a friend was being interviewed to go work in other research and development in a certain developing country. I know about 10 others who have left for the same reason. We should work hard to ensure we really turn knowledge into practice. We'll be proud. Of course, this is the skill mismatch that we were talking about. But also people want to begin, at the higher level. They don't want to actually, you might be having that degree and you feel, I can't actually be working on this conveyor belt. They don't want to actually begin from the low totem pole, so to speak.
Can I say something about this, the TVET area? The
TVET area. Just briefly, let me just read another one. We have Kanyi Gioko saying, what pains me most, Kenya, the people pushing job creation policies are wearing imported suits. Those pushing new curriculum have their kith and kin in foreign curriculums. Importers of expensive medical equipment go abroad for treatment, etc. Truth is stubborn, he says. Also, we have Bernard Koech. I read that. We have Kefa Mokaya saying, we should make our system to work. What is the state of financial health of our higher education institutions? I think this is what we were talking about earlier as well. How come universities are reeling in debt? Universities hire staff but do not pay them. This compromises quality. Commission for University Education should do an audit on this as well. Just briefly before we wind up. Yeah, you wanted to say something?
I think what I wanted to say is when we were talking about university reforms and possibilities of matching, one of the issues that came up is that one of the things that we forget, for example, if you look at 2018, the number of students that sat for KCSE was about 700,000.
Yes.
Those who got a C+ and above were only 90,000, meaning that 600,000 students got less than C+, which means that as a country, and for a long time, we had neglected the TVET sector. But you can see that this is actually 90% of the students, and if each year you are producing 600,000, in 10 years, these are 6 million people. And so one of the areas I wanted to say, and we talked about integration here and working together as a team, is that one of the efforts that I think the PS left from VTT is that there's been a lot of effort to actually revamp and rebuild new technical training centers. So I do know that now we have a policy where there is one technical training institute being built in each of the 290 constituencies. I do know that there's a lot of equipment that is being brought in through some linkages and collaboration with China. And then we ran into the issues of lack of trainers, and the PS maybe should have indicated that currently as we speak, there's about 3,000 trainers for technical training institutes that are being funded. For a long time also, we didn't have a system where people going to technical training institutes were admitted through the national system. But now we know that COOPS is involved in now admitting students to technical training institutions, and HELP, for the first time, is now funding, giving loans to people who are going to technical training institutes. And as we have indicated here, universities are very important and are very good, but what we really need, Debarl, to take this country to the next level are skills for people who can do work. People who can do plumbing, who can do engineering. And I think that the revamping that we are putting into the technical training institutes is an important aspect for taking Kenya to the next level. And the last thing I want to do to say in terms of responding to that tweet is that we really don't live in a vacuum. And Kenyans should know that we live in a world where you can go to study in Kenya, you can go to study internationally, and you can work locally, and you can work internationally. And we as a country are not producing manpower for Kenya. in fact, in some countries, I went to the Philippines, for example. If you go to the airports in the Philippines, the number of people returning from the Middle East that work there, nurses, doctors, engineers, is big. So as Africa, I think we need to open our eyes that we are training for the world, and what we need, as she says, is to know what the world is looking for so that we can include that in our curriculum.
Right, thank you. Let's come back to Mwenda on this, as well as you're also preparing to give your closing remarks briefly. What is the way forward so far? We're expecting you. I know you're really under the gun right now to also come up with a report. Because the ministry has actually given you that particular mandate as well. What is the way forward, briefly, as you also this serves you as your closing remarks?
Real quick, thank you, Debarl. I think is a shift from an emphasis on access, which we have, I think we must say, to success of the students. What is the student experience in the institution? How are they being prepared holistically as human beings to live in a world that is changing, but also in ways that they can have a livelihood. We also have to look at the government laying more emphasis on targeted support. We know the resources are limited. The government ought to say, we are going to invest in this area because given the data we have, this is an area of growth. So that they can allow those specific programs that they want to invest in to do that, and from the lowest level all the way to the university, because it's a chain. It's not separated. And then finally is to say, how do we integrate these skills with the needs of the people in this nation, but also, as my colleagues have said, the needs of outside. But how do we also train them to be patriotic enough so that they repatriate whatever they gain outside to build this country? To build this country,
yeah. Let's hear from Momo. Also, your closing remarks.
I think Debarl, as I listen, one of the challenge, like that question, the question that came out about the engineer being in the conveyor belt, I realize that many employers do not want to employ skilled workers. They want either semi-skilled or non-skilled, so that then they can make good returns. If you see the companies giving returns, huge returns.
Labor cost, yeah.
Yes, they don't want to get into this skilled labor. But I was just thinking to myself here that if, as we plan, and maybe as Professor Mwenda here with this Commission of Education brings out a report, which, and the CS...
Briefly, sir, we're winding up.
Yes, I just want to say that we need to say one engineer needs how many craftspeople. One engineer needs how many TVET. Yes, how many do you need? So that as we produce, then we know what is it we are producing.
There's a match.
Yes.
Right. Dr. Mokwana, briefly,
as
you're winding up your closing remarks.
Yes. For me, I think I would like to say that what we are going through is what other countries have gone through. If you go through Europe today, they realize that because of stagnation in population growth, that they don't have enough students to sustain their university. So what they are focused on, if you look at Australia and Europe, is that they are actually attracting international students. So I would like to urge Kenyans, we don't look, we say if the number of students is small, Africa is big. We have 1 billion people in this continent. Please, let's look beyond the borders.
Thank you. Lastly, let's hear from Edith Ukiki finally, and you can tell us about tomorrow briefly, the launch.
Okay. Thank you. What I would like to say is that we have developed an online portal for registration of interns, internship positions.
Yeah, there's
yes, and we've also for job seekers and for employers. This is the kind of data that we need to help even advise the training institutions. We have also made milestones in other areas like the labor migrations management. I would like to tell Kenyans that we have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and now it's time to showcase what we've been doing. And therefore, we are going to launch the authority tomorrow, and we are inviting all of you to be able to help us showcase what we are doing for Kenyans towards employment in this country.
Right. Thank you.